So my goal of this first module is going to be to instill in you a hope, a belief that you're not just stuck in your attachment style. I'm assuming you and anybody that joins the course once it's made has a basic understanding of what attachment styles are. And if not, that's okay, because I will touch on some of that as we go forward. But I'm not going to go too much into depth of the details of attachment styles. I'm sure a lot of you have done some research on it as you've tried to work on it, tried to overcome it. I'm sure you've read some books, read some articles, all that kind of thing. And if you haven't, I'd highly recommend at least taking the attachment style test if you haven't, because that gives you a lot of insight into which style you are and how that shows up and where it more or less comes from. We're going to go into real specifics in all of that. And we're going to go through, my goal for you and for this course is to go through not just an understanding of it, but the actual steps, tools, understandings, and beliefs to really shift from your current attachment style to where I would hope you want to get to, which is secure attachment. The best place to probably start is why you should even sit here and listen to me, other than the fact that you've all most likely come from like Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. So in some way or another, you can see I know what I'm talking about, or at least you can see I know what you're going through and what you're feeling. But to give you a bit of an idea of my origin story, if you want to call it that, I became very aware of my internal emotional world and also my disorganized attachment when I was around 15. And in case you didn't know, and very important first little point to take down here, disorganized attachment is basically just a combination of anxious and avoidant attachment. And I'll explain why that is in a little bit when we go into some explanation of the attachment styles. But basically, that's what I became very aware of. 15 years old, very unhealthy toxic relationship. Because of that unhealthy toxic relationship, a lot of intense things happened and occurred that I won't go into detail right now just because of like privacy reasons, but things that I couldn't ignore, ways I was acting, ways I was feeling, ways the other person was acting and feeling, and how all of that caused a deep toxicity in the relationship and then a negative outcome in our life. And because of these outcomes, something really intense happened, and basically it was something my parents couldn't ignore at the time. So they sent me on this psychology boot camp. And again, without going into too much depth or detail about this boot camp, and if you're interested, it's on one of my YouTube videos. Basically, I was put face to face with what was really going on inside of me. And it made me very aware that there was an internal conflict, internal intensity, or whatever you want to call it, that was causing all of this doubt in myself, all of this fear in relationships, all of this sabotage in my life, basically. My point in that is that it was such an intense moment for me and such an intense realization that at 15, I basically decided I was going to become obsessed with trying to figure out why I didn't believe I was good enough and why that was then causing my insecurities and sabotaging in relationships, but also in life in general. And that's exactly what I did. So instead of taking like the normal route in life where, you know, everybody is going to college, getting a job, a lot of the time taking the first thing they can get, or taking the things that their parents wanted them to take, so on and so forth. And then, you know, being in the job for 20, 30 years and then having like a midlife crisis and then turning to their inside world and trying to figure that all out. I did it the other way around, where from 15, I basically became really deeply involved in trying to understand myself and trying to overcome these internal conflicts, misunderstandings, fears, insecurities, anxieties, etc. And I did pretty much every psychological framework, tool, exercise, whatever that you could. I worked with a couple coaches who were like nice enough to help me for free because my parents knew them. I worked with a therapist for a bit, although traditional therapy wasn't really a big part of my life. I dug deep into understanding somatic therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, inner child work, belief shifting, anything I could. And then probably most importantly is I had that hands-on experience of like being in the trenches of unhealthy relationships and being unhealthy in relationships, and trial and error of how to communicate healthily, how to set boundaries, how to regulate myself when I'm freaking out. So I really just want to emphasize the fact that I'm not just a therapist who has read the books and is just speaking to you from what I've learned. I'm that person who was exactly where you were, dealing with exactly what you were dealing with or are dealing with right now, and I've lived it. And this is my first piece of inspiring hope or belief that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Because I know, because I'm living it right now. And I'll show you and I'll share some stories as we go into this too. But this is not something light for me. I've lived this for about 22 years now, I want to say. No, 22? No, my maths is terrible. I've got a story about that later. I've lived this for about 12 years now. But it's a decade long of experience. And on top of actually living through it and trial and error and like in the trenches and so on and so forth, I then also moved into, sharing this on social media, building up a following of like 400,000 people. Also, I hope that shows you that you're not alone in this and that there are other people going through this themselves too, which is something I very much didn't believe when I was going through it myself. But also, I then started coaching people through this. And it was really coming from a place of, I've been able to shift my relationships, my life, my view on myself and the world so much to a point where triggers, and we'll get into the definition of triggers later, but things that would bring up anxiety and panic didn't bring up that anxiety and panic anymore in me. My actions and reactions, well, first of all, I was able to like handle and control them. And second of all, the new ways I had learned created so much more success in my relationships. And I wanted to share that with people because I knew and I could start to see as I worked on this myself, other people also going through it. And I know how great it can feel to not be anxious, or to be anxious but be able to like handle it in seconds. I know what it feels like to be able to have my partner speak to someone of the opposite gender or get a text from somebody who's interested in them and genuinely not feel any shift inside of me. To be able to feel strong, confident, secure, stable. I know if you're going through this right now that you're feeling the opposite of that, either in general or in those moments where you are triggered in your relationship. And I really want to let you know that, again, there is hope. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. It's going to take some work, but it's a beautiful fucking feeling at the end of it. And I want to share that with you. Something I really want to add to the end of that is, and something I wish I had heard back then when I went through this myself, is you're not broken. You're not just fundamentally flawed. There's nothing just incorrect about you. And I'm gonna share and I'm gonna show you this tangibly, but something that's really important to understand theoretically right now is you've just learned how to be a certain way. And anything you've learned, the reactions you have, the thoughts that come into your mind, the feelings that come up that you can't control, anything you've learned, you can unlearn, or you can learn something new and put on top of that. And that's exactly what I'm going to show you throughout this course, in very deep and profound ways. But the main point of that is you're not broken. You're not fucked up. There's not something just like fundamentally wrong with you. It's about learning and shifting and building healthy new skills. And as you do that, you're also going to shift deep beliefs about who you are and how you show up in the world. And it's profound changes. So I'm excited. I'm excited to share this all with you.